This is not going to be another ISO presentation. I promise. I can see people looking at their phones, checking flight times and so forth. And I assure you this will not be another ISO presentation. Because what I want to talk about this morning is a bit more future looking, a bit more perhaps optimistic about the promise that ISO brings to us and brings to the industry and brings to transaction banking. And we're really at a really interesting time right now. We are about to finish what has been a very, very large project. November this year, when we complete the migration to interbank ISO 20022. And as the presentation is titled, it is very much no victory lap yet. And I want to start the presentation a little bit by dispelling kind of two what I think are really important misconceptions around ISO and kind of what it means for the industry. And I call it the compliance checkbox misconception, or the compliance trap. And there's two misconceptions I'd like to dispel. First and foremost, that ISO is simply a messaging upgrade. And I know I've heard from many of you, actually I've heard it in the last few days, the talk around the move from MT to MX, from unstructured to structured. And a lot of the conversation is around message translation. A lot of people talking about tools. How do we hit the deadline? The rubber's really meeting the road now in terms of making sure that you're compliant for November. And I think that loses the spirit of why we embarked on this journey and why we spent this money. The power that that data provides is the key. The power of the standardization that provides is the key. And we are not done simply by upgrading the interbank messaging, because there's a whole world outside of the interbank space that is still not taking advantage of those fields, still sending garbage in and garbage out. Yes, in between it's ISO, but the industry at large that we support, the financial community that we support, has not yet adopted it. We are not done yet. The second thing I'd like to talk about is just the end date. And I'd like to encourage everybody, and I know there's a lot of focus right now around November. Swift going to move the dates. I hope no one from Swift's in here. I really want to encourage people to think about this as not an end date, but as a start date. Because this is where the real work starts for us as an industry. We've done a lot of work to uplift our wire systems, our channels, our processing systems, our books of record, to manage ISO within our own four walls of our organizations. We have not done the work needed. Sorry to burst people's bubbles. We have not done the work needed to seed outside of our own four walls. I had my team at Scotia look at our wire traffic, and we've ISOfied our channels across 25 countries, data in, data out. And I asked them ahead of this conference, what percentage of those wires today are we receiving that are actually taking advantage of the additional fields, right? Versus just simply translating MT to MX. It's less than 5%. That's a very generous 5%. And the reason being is that we've not made it easy for our clients to use those additional fields. We have not made it easy for them to take advantage of new fields. We've not educated those clients around what it means and the value that that creates. So the real work starts now, right? We've done a lot of great work, and we can take a moment, celebrate the success in November that we've concluded the first phase of this journey, but we're really at the starting line of the ISO transformation and all of the promise that it provides for us as an industry. If we're going to get a return on the investment we've made, it is not enough to simply do the inter-FI space. We have to do the hard work now, which is to activate the global financial community. And it takes all of us in this room to avail our clients and their clients and educate them on the value of these new fields. So I recognize now that I'm kind of late in the day of a several-day BAFT session, and I figured I'd lighten it up a little bit, make it a little bit more fun. And I want to encourage everybody in this room to think about your favorite action movie. In fact, I want everybody in this room to think about superhero movies. And think about superheroes when they first discover their power, their ability to fly, their ability to read minds, their ability to climb walls, and whatever Batman does. I guess he's wealthy. Think of those superpowers. And I want you all to think about ISO as the catalyst for our superpowers in the financial services community. And the first superpower that I want you to think about is X-ray vision. Now, bear with me. That sounds, what's Matt talking about? But ISO really allows us to see context with payments for the first time. For the first time, data is flowing with the payments and not via email or via fax separately to our clients, and then they have to reconstitute that to understand why they're receiving a payment. Let's make that really tangible. Think of a global logistics company importing, exporting, shipping goods around the world, having to make payments to suppliers, receive payments from buyers, pay import taxes, pay tariffs. I won't wade into that one too far as a Canadian on stage. All of that complexity. And you think of the armies of AP and AR teams at global multinational corporates who have to manage that. And they get a list of payments from their bank, and they have a list of invoices or a list of purchase orders, and they have to start manually matching around that. And did I get paid for this invoice or that invoice? Why am I getting paid less than what this invoice says? The amount of emails and phone calls and faxes and paper that creates an inefficiency. Now, suddenly we have that X-ray power. We have the ability to see and embed in the payment the reason for the payment. And that completely changes the game. That context allows for straight-through processing, better reconciliation, and simply just better insights, saving time, making the global financial community more efficient. The second superpower that I want to talk about is shape-shifting. The idea of kind of smart, adaptive payments. Now, we live in a very complicated world where we have some payment systems that are 24/7, some payment systems that are 5 days a week, some payment systems that are 7 days a week, some payment systems that have certain terms versus other terms, certain countries that have holidays versus other countries that have holidays. Today, we put a payment on a rail, and we trust our subject matter experts. And in some cases, we trust our clients to know the intricacies of the global financial system. And payments get stopped, payments get blocked, payments hit a holiday, payments hit a snag, payments don't have the right information to route to where they need to go. They get rejected, or they sit in a queue for repair, or they require the manual intervention of a service team to call the client, right, to have additional information. Swift GPI has improved that because you know where it is and you know where it's blocked. But how do we prevent it from being blocked in the first place? Right? And this is where ISO becomes an enabler of shape-shifting, because you can start to now embed the terms and the outcome that you want in the payment. And with increased rules and increased knowledge and increased technology and automation, the payment is now smart enough to say, well, there's a holiday in this country, and this is a more efficient route to get here, and you really need the payment to get here by a certain time. Otherwise, you're going to pay late fees, or you're going to be a penalty, or you're not going to take advantage of early repayment terms. And now the payments are smart enough because of ISO to be able to reroute themselves or to suggest to an operator that there's a different or better way of doing things based on the outcome you're trying to drive. I think of it as the Domino's pizza experience, which is I really don't care necessarily that it's a wire or a real-time payment. I care about the terms. I care when it arrives and the cost and the outcome, right? The data in there now allows us to do that. The third superpower, time travel or clairvoyance. And I want people to kind of think of an equation right now. The equation I want you guys to think about is ISO plus AI equals foresight. So ISO plus AI equals foresight. And I know AI is at like the very, very peak of the hype cycle, and everybody's heard tons about AI. But at its core, if you think of AI, it needs rich data to function. Bad data equals what they call in AI hallucinations, where large language models try to interpolate answers and they hallucinate. Anybody who's used ChatGPT or Copilot, right? And if it doesn't have all the information, it gives you an answer that you're kind of like, this makes sense, but it's not accurate because it doesn't understand the context. ISO is so critical for us if we're going to take advantage of AI use cases. But it only starts to work if we populate those messages. And the ability for us to fuel future AI use cases in the payment space, to have things like intelligent routing, to have better reconciliation, to have all of these types of tools is contingent upon us having richer, deeper, consistent data, feeding our data lakes so that we can apply large language models on top of that. So it is a true catalyst for us if we really want to innovate and we really want to transform things. And you can see a scenario where imagine you're a retailer before a busy holiday season, and you've got all of these invoices, and you're purchasing inventory to stock up before the holidays, make sure you've got the latest and greatest toys that kids want for Christmas. And today, you may not know that a payment's getting caught or what that payment's for. Now, if you start combining data plus AI, it can start flagging an insight saying, hey, this payment is getting stuck, or hey, this account that is funding this payment is running short, and the consequence of this is X, Y, and Z. And even better, applying agentic AI and moving money between accounts to making sure that the payment's funded, because never shall a payment fail. But it is a key element of treasury management. So treasury becoming a source of foresight, not fire drills. The last superpower, telepathy. Invisible embedded finance. So the ability for the payments to have enough information that they can trigger a decision, that they can trigger a contract, they can trigger an execution or an activity. So when a payment is received into an inbox, it can be reconciled, it can be logged, it can be surfaced, and it can prompt activity downstream. So for instance, you may be holding inventory, maybe release inventory upon payment. Today, you require a manual operator to check and see I've received the payment before manually releasing inventory to a customer. Now, suddenly you've got enough information now that you can be telepathic. Payments received has enough information to know what customer it's purchasing for, tie that information together to say, okay, I'm releasing the inventory now. Think of the automation power that provides. Go back to that global logistics company, all the inefficiencies of global supply chain, and the power that having data fuels all these technologies unlocks. But it takes a lot of work to do that. It's exciting, it sounds futuristic. It's all at our fingertips, but we need to start feeding the data machine. We need to start feeding and filling our ISO messages, and we need to start enabling our customers and our customers' customers to have access to tools that encourage them to populate those data fields. So, where are we headed? This is bold. And I was like, when they said, come up with a vision for 2035, I'm like, I'm going to be absolutely wrong. And somewhere, somebody's going to play a video and be like, Matt, you were completely off. This is my very best guess as to where we're headed. And it's this idea of a self-driving treasury organization. Self-driving car, self-driving treasury. And why I think this is powerful is that we're at a really very interesting time in history. We've got the foundation for rich data in ISO. But we've also got real-time payments. We've got APIs that allow for real-time information and interaction between systems. You've got affordable large language models that can be applied to that data. And as those technologies start to converge, not one of those technologies in and of themselves, but as they converge, you have the opportunity to do something extremely powerful. You have the ability to start automating entire treasury workflows and over time, entire treasury organizations. You think of a corporate client's treasury organization today, you think of the amount of resources, highly qualified, highly talented resources who are working on high calorie, but low value activities, where they're having to go manually through invoices, trying to manually reconcile, work through spreadsheets. The amount of Excel that's still pervasive in treasury organizations is astounding at times, all to run their business. That's not what these teams want to do. This is not what a treasurer or a CFO wants those resources doing either. But it is a necessary evil at the moment because of the inefficiency in our infrastructure. And you can imagine a future as a function of these four superpowers that I mentioned and the confluence of all of these technologies, where suddenly you can start truly automating those workflows, truly moving to a world where a treasury organization becomes self-driving, where invoices get paid and optimized to optimize terms of repayment, capitalize on early repayment terms, or held to the last possible second to capitalize on liquidity, where account balances are optimized based on forecasted cash flow needs, with excess cash being automatically swept to the most efficient and the most highest earning assets, and then pulled back in at the last responsible second in order to maximize the return, but also make sure that the accounts are funded. You can see a world where, because of all the rich data sitting in treasury systems, that a treasurer is no longer logging into a portal and trying to do all this analysis, but the system is actually prompting and giving insights to treasurers to say, hey, if you open up new accounts this way, or hey, have you thought about this particular scenario, and the power that that unlocks, and elevating treasurers and elevating treasury organizations to being much more strategic, much more forward-looking than the reactionary treasury organizations we have today. Now that sounds perhaps far-fetched. We have a lot of work to do. But we see this in our daily lives increasingly in little areas. We see this with conversational AI. We're all seeing and testing and experimenting in our respective organizations. We can see the use cases starting to develop. We see that in our personal lives with increased efficiency and automation, AI chatbots. You miss a flight, text United, and United gets you onto the next flight. It's not a human being behind that. It's an agentic AI. So those technologies are there, and they're all coming together. So this is not Star Trek or in the future. This is coming. This is coming sooner than we think. And we need to be part of that solution. And I think collectively, we have a responsibility and an opportunity, perhaps more importantly, to make sure that we are part of creating and instilling the foundation for that self-driving AI, that self-driving treasury. So my call to action, if there's one thing I leave everybody with today, is as I started the presentation, it's no victory lap yet in ISO. We should celebrate in November this year that we reached a critical milestone in the journey. There's nothing wrong with celebrating. There's a tremendous amount of work doing so to getting to this point, but we're not done yet. I want to invite all of you to jump on the journey with me, with everybody in this room, on helping empower the future, encouraging our clients to activate themselves to use those ISO fields, to create tools and capabilities for them to use those ISO fields, and to help ensure that we are, as financial services institutions, powering and enabling the self-driving treasury organizations of the future. Thank you. Thanks so much.